뒤로. 그래, 봐봐. 똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥똥 Today I will tell you a story. The story is titled, The Cat and the Funny Story About the Shadow. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you appreciate me. You can skip this if you don't like this video. Thank you very much. The story begins as follows. One sunny afternoon, a fluffy orange cat named Whiskers was lounging in his favorite spot by the window, basking in the warmth of the sun. His tail flicked lazily, and his eyes half closed as he enjoyed the peacefulness of the day. But suddenly, something caught his attention. A mysterious, dark shape appeared on the floor, stretching across the room in a strange, curving pattern. Whiskers squinted at it suspiciously. He was no stranger to shadows, of course, but this one seemed weird. It was large, menacing, and it seemed to move on its own, without anyone or anything casting it. Whiskers' ears perked up, and his curiosity was piqued. What in the world is that? Whiskers murmured to himself. He tilted his head, watching the shadow as it grew longer and longer, almost like it was trying to chase him. His fur stood up slightly, and a mischievous thought crossed his mind. What if it's a monster? He wondered. The shadow didn't seem to be going anywhere, so Whiskers cautiously stepped closer to it. As he moved, the shadow seemed to follow him, always staying just a few steps ahead. Whiskers froze. The shadow was alive? He backed away a few steps and quickly realized it wasn't alive at all. It was just a shadow. But not just any shadow. It was a shadow, stretched out across the room, thanks to the angle of the sun. Wait a minute, Whiskers thought. Is that really my shadow? He had never seen his own shadow look so dramatic. It was long, twisted, and even a little bit terrifying. Whiskers decided it was time to investigate. He jumped onto the couch, his eyes locked on the shadow below. The more he looked at it, the more ridiculous it seemed. It was just a shadow, and yet it made him feel like he was being stalked by something out of a horror movie. With a puff of air, Whiskers sat down and stared at the shadow for a long time. I don't get it, he muttered. Why does it look like that? Why is it trying to chase me? His mind raced with bizarre thoughts. Maybe the shadow was trying to tell him something? Maybe he was plotting against him? The next day, Whiskers couldn't stop thinking about the shadow. It had been following him around the house all day, lurking in corners and creeping across walls. Whiskers was certain it was out to get him. I have to figure this out, he declared, standing tall on his four paws. He puffed out his chest and declared war on the mysterious entity that had dared to appear in his home. With a swish of his tail, Whiskers began his investigation. The first thing he did was sneak up on his shadow. He waited, crouched low, his belly almost touching the floor. With a sudden leap, he pounced at the shadow, hoping to catch it off guard. Whiskers missed again. He landed with a soft thud on the carpet. His shadow remained exactly where it was, mocking him. Undeterred, he tried again. This time, he ran toward the shadow, hoping his quick reflexes would be enough to trap it. But as he got closer, the shadow just moved further away. It wasn't possible. Whiskers was starting to get frustrated. He was being outsmarted by his own shadow. He huffed, determined to catch it this time. He ran in circles, skidding across the floor, jumping over furniture, and darting under tables. But every time he thought he had the shadow cornered, it would slip away just beyond his grasp. It was like a game of hide and seek, and Whiskers was losing badly. After what felt like hours of chasing, Whiskers collapsed onto the floor, panting. I give up, he gasped. This shadow is invincible. Just then, his human walked into the room and looked at him with amusement. Whiskers, what on earth are you doing? They asked, clearly baffled by the scene in front of them. Whiskers stood up and pointed at the shadow. It's trying to get me, he exclaimed dramatically. The human laughed. Oh, Whiskers, that's just your shadow. It's not trying to get you. It's just following you around. Don't you know how shadows work? Whiskers blinked. Following me? He looked down at the shadow, which was now resting lazily on the floor, harmless and innocent. So, you're saying you're not a monster? The human chuckled. No, Whiskers. It's just your shadow. It's always been there. Whiskers felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. He had been chasing the thing for hours, convinced it was some sort of evil force. He let out a sheepish meow and sat down, feeling slightly foolish. Over the next few days, Whiskers couldn't help but laugh at himself. He had spent so much time thinking that his own shadow was some sort of secret villain, only to realize it was just a natural part of the world. It didn't try to trick him, and it certainly wasn't trying to make his life difficult. In fact, Whiskers began to appreciate his shadow. It wasn't so bad after all. Whenever he moved, the shadow followed him, mimicking his every action. He would stretch out and watch as the shadow did the same. He would roll over, and the shadow would roll right along with him. One afternoon, while lying in the sun, Whiskers looked at his shadow and smiled. "You know, you're not so bad," he said to the shadow, as if it could hear him. "I'm sorry I tried to chase you." His human, who was sitting nearby, overheard this and laughed. "I think Whiskers has finally made peace with his shadow," they said, shaking their head in amusement. Whiskers grinned. "Yeah, we're friends now, I think." And so, the great battle between Whiskers and his shadow ended with a truce. From then on, they would live in harmony, with the shadow following him wherever he went. Whiskers had learned a valuable lesson that day. Sometimes things aren't as scary as they seem, especially when they're just part of your own reflection. And who knows, maybe, just maybe, his shadow had a good laugh at him too.